and they actively want pain and hurt and devastation, and they want evil.
That's not all.
True.
Who gon' take it there? 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 Electricity, 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 electricity. You know what's in the air.
All right, so Kyle Kulinski did a segment yesterday or the other day discussing Fox News because Fox News mentioned him on their show. It was just like this quick little collage they did of a couple different commentators. Jennifer Welch was also in there, and there's this clip of Kyle essentially talking about, like, you know, the state that modern right-wingers have devolved into and how hopeless they are in terms of like how irredeemable they are and how a lot of right-wing ideology has become that way. So that was the point that he was making. Fox News is bouncing off of that to say this thing about like the left is becoming disagreeable and, you know, distancing themselves from their family over ideas, and how could they be doing this? So that's the frame. They've been doing that actually for a long time. Why are they ending relationships with their parents? Why are leftist kids abandoning their families? That's the kind of narrativizing you're getting there, and that's because Fox News is increasingly trapping their audience within this bubble of like increasingly hostile ideas. So they need a way to explain to that audience, as their kids create distance between them, why that's happening. The kids are just pointing and saying, Fox News is doing this to you. It's making you worse. It's making you a worse person. But Fox News needs a way to keep people engaged, and so it needs to create a narrative, a reason that explains that to them. And so that's the thing I want to get into here, is like the cultural implications of all this. This is a type of back and forth we've seen a lot, but it's rising to a fever pitch, especially with somebody like Kyle, who has purposely been taking this bullish, blowhardish approach to the second Trump era, where he's just going out every day screaming about how Republicans are fascists, they're idiots, they've lost their mind, they're stupid, they're evil, they're murderous. And so that's consistently his message. And because of that, they're using him as an example of how, you know, the left is doing that. But it's also part of this pattern of Fox News using more left-wing commentators and pointing to them, like Hassan Piker and Kyle Kulinski. So it's kind of a reflection of what you've seen on the other side for a long time, where the liberal media would kind of accidentally or purposely boost certain people like Donald Trump or even like a Nick Fuentes in trying to highlight how noxious their ideas are. So there's an opportunity in the fact that the right is now trying to do that with people like Kyle Kulinski and Hassan Piker. So that's what I want to get to. But here is Kyle's comments and responses to the segment about him, as well as a couple clips from the segment as he goes through it.
Here we go, baby. Fox News apparently came after yours truly. And let's take a look here, and we'll break it down, and I will react. Here we go.
The lab results are in, and TDS is the leading cause of political breakups in America. New research showing Americans are dumping loved ones over politics at an alarming rate. More than a third say they've lost a friend, family member, or even a partner over politics, with 66% of Democrats saying they're the ones doing the dumping, compared to just 27% of Republicans.
Now, let me just pause to point out, if it was some right-winger who said to them, like, yeah, I dumped my bitch girlfriend because she's a communist and she likes Hassan Piker and she, you know, she wants to take everybody's money and redistribute it equally, and she wants to give lazy people support as they don't even work for a living. Like, they would all go, oh yeah, absolutely, right on, brother, go ahead and do that. But God forbid a liberal or a leftist go, I'm really done with your MAGA bullshit, so I'm moving on. They go, how dare you? It's bigotry. It should be illegal. There's a big hint of that in here. All right, let's continue.
And it's no wonder when you hear the vitriol liberals are marinating in all day.
The Republicans lie about loving America and being patriotic. They lie that they're good with the economy. They lie that they support the troops and they're about national security. They don't.
There's a solid 32% of the public that's out there that are mental, bro. They are deranged. They are demented. They have lost their minds. And they actively want pain and hurt and devastation. And they want evil.
That's not all.
True. By the way, no, we're actually wearing our heart on our sleeve here. And see, this is what happens when we actually start to tell the truth and tell them how we really feel. Then they start crying and whining and bitching and moaning. Because there's no hide the ball here. I just told you. I think 32% of the country is fucking mental. I think they're done. I think they're gone. I think it's over. I think they basically need to be in straitjackets, and they need to take Thorazine, and they need to be forcibly deconverted from their death cult, their terrorist imperialist death cult. Okay, I'm telling you how I feel. Ain't no hide the ball here, bitch.
This kind of reminds me, Greg, yesterday, what you were talking about with Jessica. Why do you care if I like Donald Trump?
I mean, well, first, like, Hamill's image would be meaningless if you didn't have such a connection between rhetoric and action. on the left-wing side. If they didn't act on this stuff, it would be just another inflammatory thing. We all do that, but unfortunately, they lead the league in violent political acts.
That is just factually, objectively untrue. There is no empirical data to support what he's saying. It's the opposite. It's actually right-wing political violence is way, way more common than left-wing political violence. It's like when they do there's so many trans shooters, then you look it up and it's like 4, right? You're like, what do you mean? What are you talking about? That's nothing compared to what right-wingers do and what like crazed, unbalanced, mentally ill young men do. Like, what are you talking about? They've built this fantasy land where like, we're all that's evil and they're all that's good. Meanwhile, look at what their pedophile, rapist, war criminal president is doing. He's carpet bombing little girls in Iran. He's bombing steel plants and roads and bridges and hospitals. He's looting the treasury right in front of our eyes. He's protecting pedophiles.
The packaging with him is the message. I mean, what has he said that mirrors the modern progressive? He said he was a super Antifa super soldier.
Based.
He said he has advocated for political violence, get a gun, and he says Hamas are heroic.
Can I get some more specifics, please? By the way, he was in the military. By definition, that's political violence, which means everybody on Fox News supports political violence, as long as it's organized state violence and it's directed at little girls in Iran, right? You kicked 18 million people off of Medicaid. You took away 18 million people's healthcare. That's evil. People will die as a direct result of what the fuck you did. You guys all cheered on Elon Musk as he cut USAID, which has now led to millions of deaths. Because people don't get their malaria medication, they don't get their HIV medication. There's a massive Ebola outbreak because you destroyed the Ebola preparedness and the teams that were to address that. That is evil. You are evil. When you cut Meals on Wheels, that means people starve. That is evil. You are evil. When you cut pediatric cancer research after it's been proven that we have potential cures, that is evil. You are evil. We're not doing this thing anymore where it's like, oh, what is moral? What is immoral? We just have a different idea. No, you're fucking evil. You're fucking immoral. Own the consequences of your fucking actions. Own it. Don't fucking run away from it. Don't pretend like it's okay. I just have a different conception of what makes sense. No, in no world is it okay to triple tap a little girl's school. In no world is that okay. Then Marco Rubio had the nerve to come out the other day and say, it's illegal what they're doing in shutting down the Strait of Hormuz. Oh, now you want to talk about legality? Now you want to talk about legality. After you waged an illegal war against a country that didn't attack us, it wasn't a threat to us, and you bombed schools and hospitals. Now you care about what's legal? Shut the fuck up. But you know what? You guys were the one who came out and puffed your chest out and said, fuck around and find out, bro. We don't care about your liberal feelings. Give me those liberal tears. You can't say that. You can't believe that. And then all of a sudden, when we start saying, yeah, bro, like, we agree. We're done with you. Like, we want nothing to do with you. Here's our liberal tears. Like, we're just going to go ahead and walk away and do something else now because you're disgusting. You can't then go, well, I demand that you come back here and befriend me. Go fuck yourself. So, they're going to cry, they're going to whine, they're going to bitch, they're going to moan. But deep down, it's because they know we're right.
Okay, so this is pretty consistent for Kyle, and I think Kyle really decided he wanted to lock into a certain rhetoric style and has been doing that throughout this whole second Trump era. And there is something interesting about the fact that Fox News is trying to pick up on it. So they feel like right now they have an opportunity to take the moral high ground and the moral center. So they beam themselves into all these different households of boomers and people in that age group every day and kind of express this idea of moral magnanimity, right? And they are trying to present themselves as reasonable, and the left is crazy, the left is ridiculous. And specifically The Five show is meant to exemplify that. It's meant to be sort of a culture piece. It's like a podcast, and it's just people talking to each other. That's why they have Jessica Tarlov as the like lefty on this segment. I'm not sure what she had to say during this part. She probably chimed in at some point. But the reason this type of content is particularly noxious is because they're trying to present that moral center. And what I find interesting about it, and this is not just something that Fox News does, but the mainstream liberal platforms do this as well, where they kind of completely ignore ideology. Like they almost don't address ideological questions at all, or how these different ideologies work, how they differ from each other, and how they connect. It's a weird thing where these mainstream programs seem to want to keep their audience away from thinking about that stuff too much. For example, Graham Plattner, as they're talking about him here, they say, oh, he's the guy with the Nazi tattoo. So now that Republicans are up against Graham Plattner in the general election in Maine, they are focusing on the Nazi tattoo thing as well as various comments that he's made. And they're trying to focus on that, which doesn't make a lot of sense because it's the exact kind of thing that has been thrown at them over the last several years And it never really works. I mean, if people vote for the guy, they vote for the guy. Sometimes they might be more depressed in terms of voting if, there's some kind of scandal. But a lot of times on the right, they're not. But now they think that it's more of a vulnerable position for the left, so they want to go after it. And it doesn't really matter the ideological substance. Like, they're not even really trying to make the case that fascism is really about socialism, and Hitler was a socialist, and so that's why Graham Plattner is talking about socialism. That would kind of make sense as an angle for them to go with, and I think some right-wingers are doing that. I'm sure they are doing messaging to that effect on Fox. But in this moment, instead, it seems like they're trying to say that he's a secret Nazi, that he's a secret Nazi cloaked in like left-wing rhetoric. So it really doesn't make sense. What they're saying doesn't make sense at all. They're just throwing the Nazi thing out there as a way to try to make him politically toxic. I think that already hasn't worked. So I'm not really sure who that's for, because it's not going to motivate the right necessarily. And as Kyle points out, if this guy was a fascist, you guys would vote for him. You would vote for him over Susan Collins. You would be supporting him if he was a Nazi. Clearly, his ideology is different from that. But that gets back to the thing of like, they don't actually ever want to explain to their audience the difference between fascism and socialism, and like what it means that Hitler originally called himself a socialist, or the Nazi party was originally considered socialist. Like, what does that mean historically? And the fact that they never want to talk about that, they never want to get into that, and would rather their audience just take it at face value, is the reason that narrative has spread a little bit more. You see Elon Musk saying that all the time, Hitler was a socialist. There's just no historical basis to that at all. Every historian will tell you that it's wrong. Only right-wingers would ever say that. Only somebody who wants to legitimize fascism, who wants to say, well, this new set of ideas that we have by this person that everybody is calling a fascist is not actually bad, because the bad stuff is just socialism. So you can put that all in the socialism basket. As long as we're not doing that, that's really what leads to Nazism. So there's no coherent narrative here about what exactly makes the ideology of like Graham Plattner bad, because they have to balance the foregone conclusion that left-wing ideology is bad, along with the fact that they can't get into it too much because they just have to appeal to the moral center. They just have to say, well, obviously it's ridiculous that people would go this far left, that people would want healthcare, that people would want to tear down the oligarchy, for example, which is the kind of rhetoric that you're getting from Graham Plattner that they get shaken about, and really is what has made an entire political right-wing machine turn itself against Graham Plattner. There's a lot of focus on Plattner, and make no mistake, that's because of his rhetoric. It's not because of any of his controversies, any of the shit he said on Reddit. The radicalism that people are afraid of in Graham Plattner is the things that he's saying, the actual ideology that he professes, and that's the same thing that makes him popular with people in Maine. So that presents a real problem for them, because that means they can't really impugn him without making him more popular. It's the exact same thing that happened with Trump, where if you play Trump on CNN and MSNBC enough, and you're not really addressing the underlying core of why that message is resonating with people, you might just end up helping him pick up some more fans. And so I think that's ultimately the opportunity that is represented by the fact that Fox News wants to focus on trying to impugn people's credibility and trying to use left-wing rhetoric as content for their audience. Because what the right has done is use those purposely shocking messages that they know people on the other side are going to cover disfavorably, use that as a way to get in front of more people. And then if you can win some points with your own audience with the fact that the other guys are upset, then that's a bonus. And so there's a real opportunity in the fact that the left-wing message is focused on the things that Republicans are actively doing to make America worse, and pretty simple policies that could make America better, even for Fox News' viewers. So that is the fundamental job of people like Greg Gutfeld and anybody else sitting in that seat, is to distance and separate their audience from that idea. That left-wing messaging, even if you have a problem with it on certain aspects or think certain things wouldn't work, the only objective ever is to provide for more people. And most of the audience of Fox News is people that would benefit from that. There are some people who are like, I don't know, upper middle class. The boomers are the ones who are holding on to all the property. But at the end of the day, like, these are not the fucking billionaires. The rich are not, Fox News' target audience. So that's why they can't get too much into ideology. And that's why they can't explain too much about what Trump's ideology actually is, what people actually oppose about it. I think it's really interesting how Gutfeld says this thing about, well, have you ever considered that if your dad, who you love, votes for Trump, that means Trump can't be a Hitlerian figure because your dad voted for him? That's very backwards logic. That makes no sense, actually. Zero sense. That's the kind of messaging that's going out on Fox News all the time, especially their like entertainment type of programming. Because right there, he's essentially giving his audience permission to not think about what about Trump people are saying is fascist. You're just taking it completely for granted that of course Trump isn't fascist because I voted for him. Like the person Gutfeld is talking to there is the Republican dad who voted for Trump. And he's saying, you're not a bad person for voting for Trump. That's all he's saying. And of course Trump's not a Hitlerian figure because if he was, you wouldn't have voted for him. Of course. So there's no attempt to actually look at the ideology there. And because of that, Fox News is purposely distancing its audience from understanding of the world around it. So we already know that. Fox News, I'm honestly not even sure how relevant their messaging is at this point because I think most of the energy of the Republican Party is a little younger, and I don't think the younger people in the Republican Party give a fuck about Fox News, but certainly there's still a lot of purchase that they have with the older Republicans, and they are trying to claim this ground as like the moral center right now, which undoubtedly the CNNs and the MSNBCs did for a long time. So Fox News is really just copying that same playbook. This is all just market research and stuff. They just do what works, and they do it with messaging as well. That's why they constantly are inverting logic onto itself and saying things like, well, the left wing is like clearly at the forefront of political violence in this country after literally purposely ignoring political violence for the last 10 years. Only now, because by the numbers it's down, because Trump seems to have folded the political violence on the right into the state and hired most of the people who would have been interested in committing political violence. Now all of a sudden it's this problem with rhetoric and people have to be careful about what they say. And you see it again too with this thing about like a meme that Mark Hamill posted about Trump in a grave or something. And Gutfeld says there, well, the problem with this is that the left is always the one who's doing the violence. So we all do inflammatory rhetoric. He literally says that. Listen, it's one thing to post something inflammatory. We all do that. But literally the only thing he's saying that's different about Mark Hamill is that it's left, quote unquote. So very, very dumb stuff here, but like definitely making an impact with the older and parental generation. But again, the reason they're doing this messaging about like, this is why your kids won't call you anymore and don't love you anymore is because that's a meaningful threat to them. That is the effect that their content has on their audience. It makes them more repulsive. It pushes their kids, it pushes their families away from them. And so they have to justify that. They have to give some explanation. They don't care about the fact that by doing that, they're just digging these people further and further into these holes that they're in. It's quite bleak, honestly. But Fox News has been doing this for a long time. This is their business model. And I think capitalism kind of depends on depravity like that. Like if you just kind of bet on the depravity, then your business will survive at the end of the day. So that's what this comes down to. And I think that the left has to not only not back down on this issue of like, I'm going to distance from you because you're right wing. I'm not a huge fan of that either. I do a lot of trying to discern what people are, what people's intentions are and that sort of thing on this platform. I think that's important. But at the same time, one of the more powerful tools that we have, especially that the left-leaning people of the country are still kind of in the majority, is social shame. This idea that some of these ideas are still beyond the pale. And especially as the high kind of recedes from the Trump era and we're kind of just left with a continuous war that Trump said would be over in weeks and endless lies upon lies and a much worse economy, then the shame is going to start to creep in. And this message that they're pushing is going to start ringing a lot hollower. And that is when the messages that they are accidentally promoting in trying to tell their audience about how unacceptable these messages are, those messages are then going to be very popular. So it's our job to not only, try to keep our eye on that ball and focus on that message that will ultimately be most appealing to people when the Trump movement falls apart in a few years. Whatever's going to happen, however bad things get, we need to, in terms of messaging, think ahead to what that conversation is going to look like in a collapsed Trump era, because that's going to be what is going to bring the maximum amount of people on board. But also, we have to take advantage of the fact that they're being reactive enough to some of these messages that they're actually promoting the people who are pushing it. So it's a much different dynamic than it was a few years ago when the Fox Newses, even though they were always using people like AOC as their punching bag douchebags or whatever, they were constantly on the defense in terms of trying to legitimize their bad ideas. So now they feel like they have the floor, and they are trying to decide what ideas are going to be delegitimized. But as long as that rhetoric that is shocking and appalling to them is connected to an economic message that points to the things that people see in their everyday life, because as time goes on, they will continue to see those things. And so even if they're only hearing the message through Fox News trying to delegitimize that message, it's still going to kind of like reinforce itself every single time they see the evidence of, Trump is doubling, tripling down on this war, killing more and more people, even though he said he wasn't going to do that. Trump didn't do anything about the Epstein files, and the corruption is just getting worse and worse. Trump does just seem to be stealing billions and billions of dollars, and things aren't actually getting better, and the gas prices are going up. The more people see that, the more they're going to realize that there is something to the message that they're hearing from some of these scary figures, bogeymen on the left. So if they're going to create a demand for that in their audience, then it's our job to fill that role, and it will be the death of them. In Minecraft,